Okay, let's move on to education. We briefly touched on this last week, but let's discuss it again. Representative Finnegan, if you could move the graph and
Sure.
apply that on the screen.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. In terms of statistics, the Department of Education receives nearly a quarter of the state's entire operating budget, as you can see on the graph, as the budget goes up and enrollment goes down. And nearly half of the state's funds and continues to be the largest state agency, with appropriations toward the department increasing from $1.4 billion to $2.4 billion, tacking on an extra $1 billion from 2002 to 2008. The public school enrollment, as you can see it in a downward escalating motion in red, has jumped down to 178,369 students enrolled in 2008 from 183,000 students enrolled in 2002. These numbers also include charter school enrollment. Now, if you divide the DOE budget in 2008 by the actual 2008 enrollment, then you come out to actual per pupil spending to be over $13,500, an astronomical number. Representative, could you switch onto the back page of that? Now, taking a look at SAT and proficiency testing scores, as you can see, Hawaii is well below the national average. In other words, the budget is increasing while enrollment continues to go down along with educational achievement results. Hawaii is the only state to produce such an agency that oversees all education. The DOE continues to ask for more and more money, and the residents of Hawaii continue to pay. In such a bureaucratic system, does this enable or disable teachers to teach and simply principals to lead? It seems as though the money is being mismanaged and not being spent effectively, and doesn't allow taxpayers' money to get into the classroom. Have we created a system that has failed to reward innovative teachers and principals? Why are residents of Hawaii paying for an expensive private school education while receiving these results? And why are the people of Hawaii not responding to this current situation by holding their elected officials responsible? Representatives?
Whew! My goodness, that's a long question.
Just some statistics for you.
Well, you know, that's a lot of information. Those are a lot of graphs to take a look at. And there's controversy in regards to at the school level when you take a look at graphs like that and information like that. But what I think that we need to hone in on and really focus in on is one way or the other, at the end of the day, when you take a look at statistics and you look at the competition that happens not even here in this state, but across the nation and globally, we are not doing our students any favors by allowing them or allowing our school, our Department of Education, our public education system in general to operate in an area where our expectations aren't to push them up to achieve more. The bottom line here is that we need to expect more. We know that children can perform, and we need to believe in that, because we don't do them any favors if they cannot compete in the job market nationally or globally. And we can see it now. We see it now as people go away and they're having, you know, the top paying jobs are going to students from other countries, you know? And so we have to stare reality in the face and say, what are we gonna do with the amount of money that we are investing in our public education? And now during this time when there's going to be cutbacks, we need to make sure that those cutbacks occur in the areas that don't affect the students' one-on-one teaching in the classroom. I think that there's room to do that. I think that that we can do that without necessarily cutting jobs, that we can do that by transferring maybe some of those who are working in other areas, not one-on-one with the kids, and having them closer to the student and allowing more support for the student. So we really have to, and I think the Department of Education and the Board of Education is really going to have to take a look at this and say, how are we going to make this happen? We can't keep on going to the well, because the well is, at this point in time in our economy, you know, we have some real budget tension. We have some real budget cuts going on.
You know, another irony is that we have the best of Eastern and Western culture here, where emphasis on erudition and intellectual prowess is highly valued. But yet we have underperformed. As you mentioned, we have dumbed down our expectations. I was talking to the principal of Kaiser, Mr. Sosa, today, and he was telling me that he saw a very bright young man a number of years ago in a class, and he was a good athlete, very sharp, but he was getting mediocre grades. He said, you know, you've got the potential to really excel. And as a jock, he said, you know, it's not cool to be smart. And there's been ethnic stories about the same thing, about if you're acting too much in certain ways, no act like a haole or whatever, it's not cool to be smart, which means you dumb down the expectations not only of a group but of the individuals. And it's a dilemma. We've got to change some of the subculture of how we think about education. And that's why I think the IB program, which Kaiser and the whole complex is starting to do, is preparing people in a very practical way to go to college, to better themselves, to get better jobs. And it's putting the expectation of the student, you can do it. The push and the praise of the system has to be able to lift them higher. And quite frankly, even though No Child Left Behind is not in great favor, the one great thing that it did, and is still doing, is subject to the A word, and that A word is accountability. Mm-hmm. What are we getting? That's what your question is all about. What are we getting for the money we're paying? What are we getting for what we're teaching these kids? What are the kids getting out of it for what they're putting in terms of time? Accountability is now where we're starting to measure, and I'm going to come on very optimistic. I think we're turning a corner, even though the numbers don't look good. I see some great dedicated teachers. I see principals like Mr. Sosa, who are very wise, sharp, dedicated, with vision and a sense of we can make a difference. Mm-hmm. All the studies say, however, the highest correlation between a student achievement and their future is parental engagement. We've got to get the parents of these kids to say, expect more of your kids. Mm-hmm. Get the parental involvement. And one of the big things that's coming out now is technological. There is the new, and I'm forgetting the name of the website, which for $5,000 per school will give every teacher a website for every student's name, grades, homework, where every parent can actually go in every day and say, Joey, did you have homework tonight? No, I didn't have any homework. According to your teacher, you have 3 chapters to read. And I think it's the greatest way of getting student parental involvement to mesh by using technology. And that is something that the schools are just starting to adopt in Hawaii. And I would encourage all you teachers, all you parents, link up on the internet. I think 75 to 90% of us are all wired by the internet. Link up, find out what your son, your daughter is doing in school, because those are the ways that technology can make it the same way as if it's the parent-teacher PTA meeting where you sit down and they bring out the grade book. This can be every day, and I think that's one of the greatest things that not only gives me more optimism, but because of the leadership. I, however, would say the structure of the DOE and the behemoth, the grand giant that it is, I just think it's the same way that the Soviet Union tried to manage the economy and do everything centralized. People are just not wired to do that thing in such a grand and almost unmanageable motion. If we got it down to where it's a bit more manageable, even though they say, well, you know, the rich places are going to be better educated than the others, you can still do student-weighted formulas by having different jurisdictions where you get the teachers and the principals to be able to make their decisions.
Well,